During Christmas morning, my mother whispered, "This is the last year you'll wake up in this house." I was 17 and pulling wrapping paper off a new laptop when my mother leaned close to my ear and said those words. Her breath smelled like the Baileys she'd been adding to her coffee since 6 in the morning. My father was across the living room setting up the tripod for our annual Christmas photo, and my younger sister Emma was fighting with the packaging on some new art supplies. None of them heard her. "What does that mean?" I whispered back, but she was already standing up, smoothing her robe, walking toward the kitchen like nothing had happened. The laptop sat in my hands, suddenly feeling less like a gift and more like evidence of something I didn't understand yet. That was December 25th, 2019. By New Year's Eve, I'd understand exactly what she meant, and by the following Christmas, I'd be living in a group home 3 states away, learning that sometimes the worst catastrophes start with a single sentence whispered during the happiest moments. The first sign something was wrong came 3 days later when I found my birth certificate on my mother's nightstand, not filed away in the metal box where important documents lived, but sitting loose next to her jewelry and a stack of real estate brochures for houses in Arizona. I picked it up, studying the raised seal, wondering why she'd need it suddenly. When I asked, she said something about updating insurance paperwork, but her eyes didn't meet mine. Emma found the family photos spread across the dining room table that same afternoon. Not the good ones from holidays and vacations, but the awkward school pictures and casual snapshots from random Tuesday afternoons. Mom was sorting them into 3 piles: keep, giveaway, and trash. Emma asked why she was throwing away perfectly good pictures of us, and Mom said she was just decluttering, getting ready for spring cleaning early this year. But it was December 28th. Nobody spring cleans in December. My father worked late every night that week, coming home after we'd gone to bed, leaving before we woke up. When I asked Mom where he was, she said year-end reports were due, that accounting firms always got crazy in December. That part was probably true, but the way she said it, like she was reciting lines from a script, made me pay attention to other things I'd been ignoring. Like how she'd started doing laundry every single day, even when the hampers weren't full. How she'd been cleaning out closets and donating bags of clothes to Goodwill. How she'd been asking Emma and me seemingly random questions about which relatives we liked best, which teachers we'd miss most if we had to switch schools. On December 30th, I found the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services letter. I wasn't snooping intentionally. Mom had asked me to grab her reading glasses from her bedroom, and I saw the official envelope sticking out from under a stack of magazines on her dresser. The return address made my stomach drop before I even opened it, but I did anyway, standing in her bedroom doorway, reading words that rearranged my entire understanding of our family. The letter was dated December 15th, 10 days before Christmas, and it was a notification that a dependency petition had been filed in family court. Case number HP 20,194,847. It listed Emma and me by name, along with our birth dates and social security numbers. The allegations were typed in clinical language that made them sound both official and surreal. Failure to provide adequate supervision, endangering the welfare of children, substance abuse affecting parental capacity. My hands shook as I read it twice, then a third time, trying to understand how these words connected to our actual life. We had dinner together every night. Emma and I both got good grades. We lived in a nice house in a safe neighborhood. Mom drove us to school and doctor appointments and soccer practice. She volunteered at the church bake sale and knew all our friends' names. But as I stood there holding that letter, details started clicking into place like puzzle pieces I'd been forcing into wrong spots for months. The Baileys in the morning coffee wasn't new, I realized. It had been happening for a while, maybe since summer. The cleaning and organizing and questions about relatives weren't spring cleaning or casual conversation. She was preparing for something, and the Christmas morning whisper suddenly made perfect sense. She'd known for 10 days that Child Protective Services was coming for us. I heard her car in the driveway and quickly put the letter back where I'd found it, grabbed her glasses, and met her in the kitchen like nothing had happened. She was carrying grocery bags and humming, which struck me as bizarre given what I'd just read. How do you hum while buying groceries when you know your children are about to be removed from your home? "Did you find them?" she asked, taking milk and eggs from the bags. "Yeah, they were on your dresser," I said, handing over the glasses and studying her face for any sign she knew I'd seen the letter. But she just smiled and started putting groceries away, asking if I wanted to help make dinner. That night, I called my best friend Jake and told him I might be moving soon. I didn't explain why because I didn't understand it myself yet, but I needed someone to know that something was happening. He asked if my dad got a new job, and I said maybe, even though I knew it wasn't that simple. Emma knocked on my door after Mom and Dad went to bed. She'd been quiet all day, and I wondered if she'd found something too, some piece of evidence that our life was about to implode. "Do you think Mom and Dad are getting divorced?" she asked, sitting on the edge of my bed. I almost told her about the letter, but she was only 14 and already looked scared. "I don't know," I said instead. "Maybe they're just stressed about money or work stuff." She nodded like that made sense, but I could tell she didn't believe it any more than I did. "I heard them fighting last night after you went to sleep. Mom was crying and Dad kept saying he couldn't fix it if she wouldn't get help." That was new information. I filed it away with everything else that was starting to form a picture I didn't want to see completely. "Probably just end-of-year stress," I said. "You know how Dad gets about tax season coming up." Emma went back to her room, but I stayed up until almost 3 in the morning researching dependency petitions online. I learned that they're filed when someone reports that children are being neglected or abused. I learned that CPS investigates these reports and can remove children from their homes if they find evidence of danger. I learned that parents get lawyers and court dates and opportunities to contest the allegations. What I couldn't learn was who had reported us or what evidence they thought they had. The next morning was New Year's Eve, and Mom made pancakes shaped like 2020, using a cookie cutter and food coloring to make them festive. She was trying too hard to be normal, and I could see Emma noticing it too. We ate breakfast while Dad read the newspaper and made occasional comments about college football bowl games, all of us performing this family breakfast like actors who'd rehearsed it 100 times. At 11:37 that morning, someone knocked on our front door. Mom's fork stopped halfway to her mouth, and she looked at Dad with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure panic, but trying to hide it. Dad folded his newspaper carefully and stood up, straightening his shirt like like he was about to give a presentation. Girls, go upstairs, Mom said quietly. Why? Emma asked. Just go upstairs and close your doors. But I was 17 and curious and scared, so I went halfway up the stairs and sat on the landing where I could hear everything. Emma followed me, whispering questions I couldn't answer. Through the front door's glass panels, I could see two people on our porch. A woman in a navy blazer holding a clipboard, and a man in a uniform that looked like police but wasn't quite right. County sheriff, maybe, or court security. Dad opened the door and said, "Good morning. How can I help you?" "Mr. Patterson? I'm Linda Kowalski from Allegheny County Children and Youth Services. This is Deputy Martinez from the sheriff's office. We need to speak with you and your wife about your children." My father's voice changed completely, becoming formal and careful. "Do you have identification?" They both showed him badges and paperwork. I heard Dad call for Mom, and she appeared beside him, her hands smoothing her hair, her pajamas suddenly looking inappropriate for whatever was about to happen. "We have a court order for the emergency removal of Emma Marie Patterson and David James Patterson," the woman said. "The children need to gather some personal belongings. We'll wait here while they pack." Emma grabbed my arm so hard it hurt, her fingernails digging into my skin. I put my hand over hers and tried to keep breathing normally, but the hallway felt like it was tilting. "There must be some mistake," my mother said. "We haven't done anything wrong. Our children are fine." "Ma'am, I understand this is difficult, but we have reports of substance abuse affecting your ability to safely parent these children. The court has determined they need to be placed in protective custody while this matter is investigated." Reports, plural. Someone had called CPS about my mother's drinking, and apparently more than once. "Who reported us?" Dad asked. "I can't share that information, but I can tell you that multiple concerns were filed over the past several months. The children need to pack now. They're being placed with a licensed foster family tonight." Foster family. The words hit me like cold water. Emma started crying quietly beside me, and I realized this was really happening. In about an hour, we'd be living with strangers because someone had noticed what I'd been trying not to see. Mom called up the stairs for us to come down, her voice shaky but trying to sound normal. Emma and I walked down slowly, holding hands like we were little kids again. The woman, Linda, smiled at us in that professional way adults use when they're about to deliver bad news. "Hi Emma." "Hi David. I know this is scary and confusing, but you're safe and everything's gonna be okay. You need to pack some clothes and anything important you want to take with you." "Where are we going?" Emma asked. "To a foster home with a very nice family who takes care of children when their parents need help working through some problems." I wanted to ask how long we'd be gone, but I was pretty sure she wouldn't know. These people dealt with crises and emergencies, not long-term planning. We went upstairs to pack, and I could hear my parents talking quietly with Linda in the living room. Dad's voice kept getting higher, more desperate, asking about lawyers and appeals and when we could come home. Mom wasn't saying much, just crying. Emma stuffed clothes randomly into a duffel bag, not caring if they matched or fit properly. I tried to be more systematic, packing a week's worth of everything, plus my laptop and phone charger, and the book I was reading for English class, as if normal life would continue wherever we were going. "Are we ever coming back?" Emma whispered. "I don't know," I said, because lying to her seemed worse than admitting I was just as lost as she was. We carried our bags downstairs, and Linda checked them quickly, I assume looking for anything dangerous or inappropriate. She nodded approvingly and asked if we had any medications or special dietary needs. Mom hugged us both, crying harder now, telling us she loved us and this was just temporary and she was going to fix everything. Dad hugged us too, whispering that he was hiring a lawyer and we'd be home soon. But I could see in Linda's face that soon was probably relative, and our version of soon might be very different from the legal system's version. Deputy Martinez helped us carry our bags to a white sedan parked behind Linda's car. I'd never been in a government vehicle before, and it smelled like industrial cleaning supplies and vinyl. Emma sat beside me in the back seat, still crying, while Linda drove and tried to explain what would happen next. We were going to the Hendersons, a family who'd been fostering children for 8 years. They had a nice house with separate bedrooms for us, and they knew we'd be scared and confused. Mrs. Henderson had made dinner already, something we'd hopefully like. Mr. Henderson worked from home, so someone would always be there if we needed anything. "Can we call our parents?" I asked. "Not tonight, but probably tomorrow after everyone's had time to process this," Linda said. "Your parents love you very much, and they're going to work with us to address the concerns that brought us here today." The Hendersons lived in a suburb I didn't recognize, in a 2-story house with a front porch and flower boxes that were empty because it was winter. They came outside to meet us, a middle-aged couple who looked like they shopped at Target and attended PTA meetings. Normal people, which somehow made everything feel more surreal. Mrs. Henderson hugged Emma gently and told her she had a daughter about her age who was visiting her grandmother this week, so Emma would have the pink bedroom to herself. Mr. Henderson shook my hand like I was an adult and asked if I played any sports. They gave us a tour of the house, showing us where the bathrooms were, how to work the TV remote, where they kept snacks. Our bedrooms were across the hall from each other, decorated like guest rooms but with children's books on the shelves and stuffed animals sitting on the dressers. Dinner was spaghetti and meatballs, which was one of Emma's favorite foods, though she barely ate anything. I managed a few bites while the Hendersons asked careful questions about school and hobbies, trying to normalize a situation that was anything but normal. After dinner, Mrs. Henderson helped Emma get settled in her room, while Mr. Henderson showed me how to connect to their Wi-Fi and said I could call my friends if I wanted to let them know I was safe. But what would I tell them? That my mother was an alcoholic and CPS had removed us from our home? That I was living with strangers because multiple people had reported my family to the authorities? That I'd spent 17 years thinking we were normal, only to discover we were the kind of family that social workers whispered about? I texted Jake instead. "Something happened with my family. I'm staying somewhere else for a while. We'll explain later." He texted back immediately. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" I stared at that message for a long time before typing, "I'm okay, just dealing with some stuff." But I wasn't okay. I was angry and confused and embarrassed, lying in a stranger's bed wearing pajamas I'd packed in a rush, while government officials waited downstairs. Emma was crying quietly in the room across the hall, and I could hear Mrs. Henderson's voice through the wall, probably trying to comfort her. I'd never felt so powerless in my life. The next morning, January 1st, Mrs. Henderson made pancakes again, but these were regular round ones, not shaped like numbers. She asked if we usually went to church on Sundays, and when we said yes, she offered to take us to their church if we wanted. Emma said no, but I said yes, because I needed something familiar, even if it meant sitting in a pew full of strangers. Their church was bigger than ours, with a contemporary service that included electric guitars and a video screen. The pastor talked about new beginnings and fresh starts, which felt either perfectly timed or cruelly ironic. I prayed for the first time in months, asking God to help me understand what was happening to our family, and to keep Emma from being too scared. After church, Linda called to check on us and said she'd arranged for us to talk to our parents that afternoon. The conversation would be supervised, meaning she'd listen to everything we said, but it was better than no contact at all. We met at a CPS office downtown, in a small room with chairs arranged in a circle like group therapy. Mom and Dad were already there when we arrived, looking like they hadn't slept. Mom's eyes were red and swollen, and Dad was wearing the same shirt from yesterday. They hugged us carefully, like we might break, and asked how we were doing. Emma started crying immediately and asked when we could come home. "We're working on it, sweetheart," Dad said. "I hired a lawyer, and we have a court date next week." "What do we have to do?" I asked Linda. She consulted her folder of papers. "Your parents need to complete a substance abuse evaluation and follow any recommended treatment. They'll also need to attend parenting classes and participate in family counseling. If they successfully complete these requirements and the court determines it's safe, you can return home." "How long does that take?" Emma asked. "It depends on several factors, but typically several months for the evaluation and treatment process." Several months. Emma's face crumpled, and Mom reached for her hand across the small space between their chairs. "I'm so sorry, baby," Mom whispered. "This is all my fault. I should have gotten help sooner." That was the first time she'd admitted there was actually a problem, not just reports or allegations or misunderstandings. Her drinking wasn't just Bailey's in morning coffee or wine with dinner. It was serious enough that multiple people had called the authorities, serious enough that a judge had signed an order to remove us from our home. The visit lasted exactly 1 hour, monitored by Linda, who took notes on everything we said. Before we left, Dad gave me his cell phone number written on a piece of paper and said I could call him any time, though I'd have to ask the Hendersons for permission first. Back at the foster house, I helped Emma unpack her clothes properly and arrange her art supplies on the desk in her room. She was trying not to cry, but I could tell she was struggling with the reality that this wasn't a temporary sleepover. "Do you think Mom's really an alcoholic?" she asked while folding her school uniforms. I'd been wondering the same thing. "I think she drinks more than she should, and it's affecting how she takes care of us. But she makes us dinner every night and drives us to school and helps with homework." "I know, but maybe there were things we didn't see, or things that worried other people." Emma was quiet for a while, arranging and rearranging her stuffed animals on the bed. Finally, she said, "I saw her drink beer for breakfast once when she thought I was still asleep. It was last month on a Saturday morning. That was new information, and it made my stomach hurt." "Did you tell anyone?" "No, I thought maybe she was just really thirsty or it was left over from the night before." Beer for breakfast was definitely not normal, even if Emma had rationalized it at the time. How many other things had we seen and explained away because we wanted to believe our family was fine? School started back up on January 3rd, and Linda enrolled us at the local high school and middle school near the Hendersons' house. I was 3 months into my senior year, and Emma was a freshman, so the timing couldn't have been worse for disrupting our education. Walking into a new school mid-year with no friends and no history was like being dropped into someone else's life. I had to explain to guidance counselors and teachers why I'd transferred so late, and I couldn't tell them the truth without admitting my mother was in court-ordered treatment for alcoholism. I said my family had moved for my father's job, which was simpler than explaining that we'd been removed from our home by Child Protective Services. The lie felt heavy every time I told it, but the truth felt impossibly complicated. Emma had a harder time adjusting. Middle schoolers are brutal about anything that makes you different, and being the new kid who started mid-year with no explanation marked her immediately as someone with problems. She came home crying most days that first week, saying kids were asking too many questions she couldn't answer. Mrs. Henderson tried to help by contacting Emma's new teachers and asking them to keep an eye on her, but that just made her feel more like a charity case. She started spending most of her time in her room, drawing pictures of our old house and the cat we'd had to leave behind. Our first court hearing was January 10th, and Linda drove us to the courthouse so we could see our parents and understand what was happening legally. Family court was nothing like the courtrooms on TV, just a small room with fluorescent lighting and mismatched furniture. Everyone speaking in quiet voices about serious things. Mom and Dad sat at a table with their lawyer, a woman named Jennifer Martinez, who specialized in dependency cases. She'd explained to them that admitting to the alcohol problem and accepting services was their best chance of getting us back quickly. The judge, an older man with reading glasses, reviewed the case file and asked Mom directly if she understood why her children had been removed. "Yes, Your Honor," Mom said, standing up like she'd practiced. "I have a drinking problem that has affected my ability to parent safely. I've already started attending AA meetings, and I'm scheduled for an evaluation next week. And you, Mr. Patterson, you understand the concerns?" Dad stood up too. "Yes, Your Honor. I should have gotten help for my wife sooner instead of hoping the problem would resolve on its own." The judge nodded and scheduled another hearing for February 15th, giving Mom 6 weeks to complete her evaluation and begin treatment. Emma and I would remain in foster care until then, with supervised visits twice a week. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt like we were all pretending to understand a system that was designed to break families apart and put them back together in better configurations. But what if the breaking was easier than the rebuilding? Over the next month, our twice-weekly visits became a routine of awkward conversations in that same small room at CPS. Mom would update us on her treatment progress, telling us about AA meetings and counseling sessions like they were school assignments she was completing. She'd been diagnosed with alcohol use disorder, moderate to severe, which sounded clinical and official, and somehow worse than just saying she drank too much. The treatment plan included 90 meetings in 90 days, individual therapy, family therapy, and random drug and alcohol testing. Dad was attending Al-Anon meetings for families of alcoholics, learning about enablement and codependency, and how to support Mom's recovery without controlling it. He looked exhausted all the time, working full days days and then driving to meetings or appointments every evening. Emma asked during one visit if we could come home for her 15th birthday in February, and Mom started crying again. The date would be February 12th, 3 days before our next court hearing. But even if everything went perfectly, we probably wouldn't be home by then. Mrs. Henderson offered to throw Emma a small party at their house, inviting some girls from her new school, but Emma said no. She didn't want to celebrate her birthday in foster care, and I understood completely. The February court hearing brought better news. Mom had completed her evaluation and was attending treatment regularly, with clean drug and alcohol tests for 30 days. The judge was impressed with her progress, but said the children would remain in foster care for another 60 days while she continued treatment, and the family participated in counseling together. 60 more days felt like forever, but it was progress. We'd be home by April, just in time for the end of my senior year and Emma's freshman year. I'd miss graduation with my original class, but I could walk with the new school if I wanted to. Family therapy started the next week, and it was brutal in ways I hadn't expected. The therapist, Dr. Sarah Kim, asked questions that forced us to talk about things we'd all been avoiding for years, like how long Mom had been drinking heavily. She admitted it started after Emma was born, when postpartum depression hit and wine seemed like an easier solution than antidepressants. What began as one glass with dinner became 2, then 3, then drinking earlier in the day when Dad was at work and we were at school, or how often Dad had covered for Mom when she was too drunk to function, making excuses to our teachers when she forgot to sign permission slips or missed parent conferences, driving us to activities she'd promised to handle, doing grocery shopping and laundry because she'd passed out on the couch again, or how Emma and I had learned to check Mom's mood before asking for anything important, gauging how much she'd been drinking by the way she held her coffee mug or pronounced certain words. We'd all been managing around Mom's alcoholism for years without calling it that, and admitting it out loud in that therapy room felt like confessing to crimes we didn't know we'd been committing. Dr. Kim explained that children in alcoholic families often become hypervigilant and overly responsible, trying to control chaos they can't actually control. She said Emma's artistic talent and my academic success might have been ways of earning approval and avoiding conflict, which made me angry because it felt like she was pathologizing our achievements. But she also said we'd learned important skills like empathy and resilience, that we weren't damaged beyond repair, that families could recover from this with work and time and commitment. By March, our visits had moved from the supervised room to restaurants and parks, and eventually to our old house for a few hours at a time. Walking into my childhood bedroom after 2 months away was strange. Everything looked smaller and dustier than I remembered, like returning to an apartment you'd lived in during college. Mom had cleaned obsessively while we were gone, reorganizing every closet and cabinet, painting Emma's room the blue color she'd wanted for months, fixing household repairs Dad had been postponing. The house looked better than it had in years, but it felt different too, like a stage set of our old life. She'd also thrown away every bottle of alcohol in the house, including cooking, wine, and vanilla extract with alcohol content. The liquor cabinet in the dining room had been converted to storage for board games and photo albums. She was taking recovery seriously in ways that made me hopeful and nervous at the same time. Our final court hearing was scheduled for April 20th, and by then Mom had completed 90 days of sobriety, attended her required meetings, and participated in family therapy every week. Dr. Kim wrote a report recommending reunification, and Linda agreed that we could return home with continued supervision for 6 months. The judge reviewed everything carefully, asking Emma and me directly if we felt safe returning home. Emma said yes immediately, but I hesitated, trying to figure out how to express my complicated feelings in a courtroom setting. I think my mom is trying really hard to get better, I finally said, and I want to be home for the rest of high school. That was enough for the judge. He signed the order returning us to our parents' custody, effective immediately, with requirements for continued family therapy and random alcohol testing for Mom. Moving back home that afternoon felt surreal. Mrs. Henderson cried a little when she hugged us goodbye, saying we were welcome to visit any time, and she'd miss having us around. Emma promised to send her drawings, and I said I'd let her know how graduation went. Our old house smelled like fresh paint and cleaning supplies, and Mom had prepared our favorite dinner, grilled chicken and mashed potatoes and green beans from the garden she'd started tending while we were gone. She'd also bought sparkling cider to celebrate, conscious of the irony of avoiding alcohol at a celebration. That night, Emma knocked on my bedroom door like she used to when we were younger, wanting to talk about everything that had happened. We sat on my bed comparing notes about foster care and therapy and court hearings, trying to process 4 months that had changed everything about our family. "Do you think she'll start drinking again?" Emma asked. It was the question I'd been avoiding, but also the most important one. "I don't know," I said, "but I think she knows what happens if she does." We'd learned that recovery wasn't just about stopping drinking, it was about building a completely different life that didn't rely on alcohol to manage stress, or boredom, or sadness. Mom was learning new coping skills and attending meetings and taking medication for anxiety that had probably been fueling her drinking for years. But alcoholism was a chronic disease, not a character flaw she could fix with willpower. She might relapse, and if she did, Emma and I knew what to do. Call our father, call Linda, call anyone who could intervene before things got dangerous. I graduated with my new school in May, walking across the stage in a rented cap and gown, while my parents cheered from the audience. It wasn't the graduation I'd imagined as a junior, but it was meaningful in ways I couldn't have predicted. Mom had been sober for 6 months, and we were living together as a family that had survived its worst crisis. Emma finished her freshman year with better grades than she'd ever earned, despite switching schools mid-year and dealing with family trauma. She'd made new friends who didn't know about our foster care placement, which helped her feel normal again. That summer, we went on our first family vacation in 3 years a week at Virginia Beach, where Dad had taken us when we were little. Mom brought her AA materials and found meetings in the area, treating her recovery like the priority it needed to be. Sitting on the beach watching Emma and Dad build sandcastles, I thought about the Christmas morning when Mom had whispered those words in my ear. She'd known our family was breaking apart, and she'd been right about it being the last year I'd wake up in that house as a child who believed his family was normal. normal. But she'd been wrong about some things too. We had woken up in that house again, 6 months later, as a family that understood itself better. We knew we were the kind of family that could survive crises and court orders and supervised visits. We knew recovery was possible but not guaranteed, that vigilance was the price of staying together. The house looked the same from the outside, but everything inside had changed, not just the paint and furniture, but the way we talked to each other, the way we handled problems, the way we celebrated good news without alcohol being part of the celebration. Emma's 16th birthday that February was the first family celebration we'd had since getting back together, and Mom made her a cake shaped like a painter's palette, with different colored frosting for each section. We gave Emma art supplies and gift cards, and she gave us drawings she'd made in foster care pictures of our family holding hands, our house with all the windows lit up, our cat sleeping in the sunny spot by the kitchen door. Looking at those drawings, I realized that even during our separation, even when everything was uncertain and scary, Emma had been imagining us together again. She'd drawn the future she wanted, and somehow we'd managed to make it real. 2 years later, I was home from college for Christmas break, and Emma was a junior in high school, still making art but also playing volleyball and dating a boy named Marcus who seemed nice enough. Mom had been sober for 2.5 years, attending meetings regularly and sponsoring other women in early recovery. Dad had learned to talk about feelings and boundaries and enabling behaviors, concepts that had been foreign to him before crisis forced him to develop emotional vocabulary. They were in couples counseling, working on rebuilding their marriage around honesty instead of silent management of Mom's drinking. Christmas morning 2021 was quiet and deliberately low-key. We opened presents slowly, taking time to appreciate each gift and the normalcy of being together. Mom made coffee, regular coffee, and Dad cooked bacon while Emma and I figured out how to work the new smart TV they'd bought for the living room. At some point during the morning, while we were all laughing about Dad's inability to understand the remote control, Mom caught my eye across the room and smiled. Not the desperate smile from that terrible Christmas 2 years earlier, but a genuine expression of contentment. She didn't whisper anything cryptic this time. She didn't need to. We all knew this was the year we'd truly come home, not just to our house, but to each other, with all the complicated knowledge that made our love more intentional and therefore more real. Emma was working on a college portfolio that included some pieces about family recovery and resilience. She'd written an essay about foster care that her English teacher had praised as honest and insightful. She was applying to art programs, but also considering social work, inspired by Linda and the other professionals who'd helped our family navigate the worst period of our lives. I was studying psychology, interested in addiction and family systems, probably because of our experience, but also because I discovered I was good at understanding complicated emotional dynamics. Dr. Kim had encouraged me to consider graduate school in family therapy, saying I had natural insight into how families both break and repair themselves. That Christmas evening, after we'd eaten dinner and watched movies and played board games, Mom asked if we wanted to look through the photo albums she'd been organizing. She'd created a section for 2020 that included pictures from our foster placement photos the Hendersons had taken and shared, pictures from our supervised visits, even a few from court hearings. It was the first time we'd looked at those images as a family, and they were harder to see than I'd expected. Emma looked so young and scared in the January pictures, and Mom looked broken in ways that were painful to witness even in hindsight. But there were also pictures of progress. Mom smiling genuinely at an AA meeting, Emma laughing with her foster sister during a visit, Dad looking proud at my graduation. The album told the story of a family that had fallen apart and learned how to be better. I keep these to remind myself why I go to meetings, Mom said, closing the album. Not to punish myself, but to remember that recovery is worth protecting. Emma leaned against her shoulder, something she hadn't done comfortably for years. Are you happy now? She asked. Mom considered the question seriously. I'm grateful, she said finally. Happy feels too simple for everything we've been through, but grateful covers more ground. I understood what she meant. Happiness was temporary and circumstantial, but gratitude was a practice, something you could choose even when things were difficult. We were grateful to be together, grateful for the professionals who'd intervened when we couldn't help ourselves, grateful for the chance to rebuild our family with better tools and clearer understanding. That night, lying in my childhood bed during winter break from college, I thought about all the families who don't survive what we survived, the kids who never get to go home, the parents who can't sustain recovery, the relationships that break under the pressure of addiction and legal intervention. We'd been lucky in specific ways. Mom had responded well to treatment. Dad had been willing to change his own behavior. Emma and I had been placed with foster parents who cared about our well-being, and we'd all been healthy enough to do the hard work of recovery together. But we'd also made choices that had given luck a chance to work. Mom had admitted she had a problem instead of fighting the system. Dad had stopped enabling and started supporting. Emma and I had participated honestly in therapy instead of just going through the motions. And slowly, over months of court dates and supervised visits and family therapy sessions, we'd become a different version of ourselves, not perfect, but more intentional about how we loved each other and handled problems.